With its technical simplicity and ease of use, not to mention efficiency, isometric training is one of the purest forms of strength training available, which not only makes it ideal for building strength, but because there's no minimum or maximum amount of resistance with any given exercise, it allows you to also achieve higher levels of tension than you might otherwise have with dynamic training, but it can also lead to greater levels of fatigue in the muscle, which makes it really good for potentially building muscle. But don't let the simplicity fool you, because it's really easy to just jump in and apply a lot of force. And while that can be effective, it's not usually the best way to go about doing things, especially if we're really trying to stimulate a good amount of hypertrophy. So in today's video, I've got my top tips to help you elevate your isometric training to make it not only safer and more effective, but just get a little bit of extra oomph into the muscles to build more muscle and hypertrophy. The first strategy that I recommend is to really implement a good amount of rise time, as they call. When we're applying force through the strap or whatever you're using to really use the isometrics to a high degree, there's always that temptation to immediately jump into a lot of tension. But we have that cortical inhibition, which means your nervous system, which is of course driving your muscles in the first place, can kind of have an inhibition about it if it feels like there's something that can't move. So that's why having a strap that can stretch a little bit, a spring, but also that rise time helps you overcome that. So instead of just applying force quickly or even having a couple seconds of rise time, really use a little bit more than you may think is necessary. So apply that force with a good amount of 5 to 10 seconds of increasing, and that bypasses a lot of that cortical inhibition, which not only makes it a lot more comfortable, but it also allows your nervous system to drive a lot more tension in the muscle. Second, you're probably going to want to hold for longer periods of time than is often recommended out there in the isometric culture or programming, where a lot of times people are more focused on developing just raw absolute strength. And with that, usually people are holding for about 4 or 5 seconds and then releasing. But that's kind of like the equivalent of doing one hard repetition of a dynamic exercise. So instead, I recommend holding for a good 15, 20, 30, maybe even 40 seconds to really burn the muscle out. You want to feel like you're having trouble just contracting the muscle at all towards the end of that hold time. Yes, definitely have a lot of contraction and contracting as hard as you can so you're still developing that strength, but go for a longer period of time. And also, you may also want to keep your rest periods shorter. Now, I personally, when I do this, I'll set up like a Tabata timer. So it's 20-second holds, but only 10 seconds of rest, because remember, you're going to recover pretty quick after your sets with isometrics. So it's 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, and then immediately right in another 20 seconds to really blast out the muscle. 2, maybe 3 sets, and you want to feel like the muscles are good and cooked at the end of that. Third is employ what I like to call the PTR principle, position, tension, resistance. Don't just jump in and be like, okay, here we go. Instead, take your time setting up for the position to make sure everything's where you want it to be. You've got good alignment, because a lot of isometrics are full body exercises. So elbows in good position, hands in good position. Then proactively engage the muscles you want to be working. And then finally, apply the resistance against the handles or whatever equipment that you're using. This ensures that you have proper position, but also good tension control in the muscles you want to be using. And then you apply the resistance. If you apply the resistance too quickly and then think, oh yeah, that's right, my hands need to be in a little bit, or wait a minute, my tension in my abs isn't quite engaged enough, it's a little bit harder to get that stuff really dialed in once you're already working. So even just a moment of position, tension, and then you apply the resistance can go a long way at making the exercises safer, more comfortable, and a lot more effective. Stability is also a very important factor, because you're only as strong as you are stable. And if you're really fighting to stabilize your body during an exercise, that's less energy and effort you can put into actually working the muscles. So in particular, if you're using something like the ISO trainer or something, And you notice that when you apply force against your feet, there's coming in, or you're a little bit on a narrow, unstable surface. And that's why I highly recommend running a strap or the equipment you're using underneath some sort of a platform like an aerobic step or a plyo box or something. Now I'm going to have a lot more stability with the straps, and my feet are on a very stable platform. They're not getting pulled inwards or outwards, and I can really put a lot more force directly into the muscles without worrying about compromises to my stability. And lastly, don't forget that the whole point of, well, any strength training endeavor is to adequately work the muscles, not to necessarily lift the weight or move the cable around. And the same is true for isometrics. Your goal is not to put as much force as possible into your handles. The goal is to contract the muscles as hard as possible. And you may find that this is going to be easier if you don't try to always have your maximum absolute amount of force that you're applying into your equipment. So as you're using that rise time, give yourself permission to only apply 75, 80% of the effort you have. You don't need to max out all the time. And I'm contracting, or focusing on contracting, my biceps and my back very, very hard, as opposed to trying to just pull on the straps. That way, you're putting your effort into creating a stronger stimulus in the muscle itself, versus just trying to see how hard you can pull against the handle, which might lead to all sorts of compensation in your technique. Other muscle groups are really trying to overkill things. You do definitely want to have everything working. This is a full body exercise. There's just emphasis in the biceps. And if you find that you can do that with a little less than maximum force, you're probably going to be better off for it. If you want to learn more, check out my book, Overcoming Isometrics. The links to that in the PDF store and Amazon is down below, and the Overcoming Isometrics playlist that I have here, and all sorts of videos on workouts, exercises, equipment recommendations, and many things to explore. Thank you very much for watching. Best of luck in your workouts. Be fit and live free.